like. Courses and. I mean, I know I'm gonna reach I'm fine reaching the minimum number of credits I need to graduate, I just need to make sure. That I reach the minimum number of credits I need for my major,
Right.
because the courses abroad are only gonna count for 3 credits. Because they're 5 credits.
Which one's full?
The J term.
Oh, it's full? That's shocking to me because that has 20 seats.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I'm popular or something? I don't know. I hope that's true. I try to be a fair but tough professor, so. Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, granted, it's further out than I'd like to admit. Like, my 20-year college reunion is coming up next year, but I still feel like I'm really close to having been a college student. And so I understand, I remember my cognitive professor just like talking about an assignment that was on the syllabus. We all full knew it was there. And she stopped and she said, all of your eyes just got giant. And I don't feel like you all can handle this. So I'm just gonna take it off the syllabus. And so like I had models like that and I try to use them going forward.
It happened to me like every semester.
Well, the nice thing is eventually you'll get to the point where you're the first one to register, so it won't happen, but I can't believe that J term is full. Like that shocks me. Just my J term class. Yeah, yeah. But it also kind of sucks because like, well, and like people who are not honors people should be able to get the classes they want too, right? So it's like, I don't know. We just need like 5 more of me and then we'd be good in the department. We are getting to hire a new psychologist, which is exciting. There'll be an IO applied person. And so like, that's awesome because we've been asking for a person like since I've been here, which I want to say is like 14 years. So, but our hope is that we can still get another person who would overlap with Dr. Martorell and I, because our classes are the most popular. Alrighty. Is it? We're gonna have to raise caps. And my gender class, and apparently also my J-term class, which I just found out. So did you? I saw that I have a bunch of emails, but like I dropped my daughter off and shower and come basically. So I haven't had a chance to answer emails yet. Yeah, do draft an email because what I'll do until I get like departmental approval to raise my caps is I'll do a wait list, basically. I mean, I am the chair, I could just do it, but we're very much a democracy, right? So we like to all operate on the same page. Oh, look, it's 10:01. Sorry, guys. We are folks on Zoom. We are talking about psych classes are already filling, which is like, I don't know why it's shocking me because I know we're a popular major. Wow, you look spiffy today. Nice. Oh, I've been seeing that advertised. Nice. I know that you're speaking on a panel.
Yes. So looking forward to that. It could be well, hopefully entertaining and interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I know like when I've been on panels that also have students, most people want to talk to the students. So you'll probably get a lot of good questions.
I have a lot that I can see.
That's good. That's awesome. All righty. Okay, so sorry, I got distracted talking about classes, and I am the chair of the department, so I will take a look at everything and we'll probably raise caps, because what this means is our major is getting popular again, which was awesome. I mean, it's always been popular, but we were like down relative to where we had been, I think mostly because the whole enrollment was down in the pandemic, right? But it means that we probably need to be more forgiving with our caps, so. Just obviously we're psych professors, so we don't want to screw you guys over. Like that's one of our biggest things, so. And it shouldn't be that like juniors can't register for upper level classes, like that's a little ridiculous, so.
Surprise.
It's just the four of us being too dang popular, I guess, I don't know. Let me see. So I have an assignment I'm gonna have y'all do today. So what I'm seeing is if I actually ever posted it over here. I did. Look at me being on top of things for once. So if you go to Blackboard, folks on Zoom and folks here in person, and you can feel free to like partner up with someone or do this by yourself. This is one of those that you'll get points just for like being in class and participating in it. But if you click on the link for making a good data visualization, what you'll see is there's some data from the 2021 Virginia gubernatorial election, because that was happening right around the time I was teaching this class 2 years ago. And then what I'd like you to do is make your own visualization. You can like draw it. You can like put the data in Excel and have it create a bar graph. And then what I want you to do is just copy paste your various visualizations into this document. And then we'll just kind of look at everybody's, and if everybody makes a bar graph, awesome. But you know, maybe we'll have some variety. And so we have the number of votes each person got, and then also the statewide registered voters and the voter turnout. So you can use all that data in whatever way you want, and take 5-10 minutes to make some data visualization based off this data. And again, you can find this link if you go to Blackboard and then assignments, and you scroll down to making a good data visualization. And for those of you on Zoom, I know sometimes, especially if you're on your phone, it's hard to juggle things. So I will put it in the chat as well. For my clinical neuropsych class, I have them do stuff on the board. And so for the Zoom people, I switched to my cell phone. And for some bizarre reason, it took me like days to remember how to switch the camera. It's not that hard. There's a little button, but like on the phone, it's really different. So. You're saying, okay. Let me go ahead and make sure that it is shared for everybody. Oh, I have it in view and I want you to be able to edit it. Hang on just 1 second. There you go. You should be able to do it now. And if you can't, let me know and I will redo the link. Because every once in a while, Google Docs is moody. Recopy the link anyway to be on the safe side. There we go. All right. Now it should actually like show the document when you go to click on it too.
And I still haven't advertised for the grade to, I'm sorry for that, I've been eating much. Bigger with that, but I still have one here, it's saying, well, I think that's good, but. Oh, this got worse. I feel like it's like. Love that.
Love that for us. Oh, infant development's almost full too. Jeez. So yeah, again, once you have your data visualization, just copy paste it into the same Google Doc and then we'll see kind of how everybody did it. Yes. One of my other classes is already full too. Oh my gosh. My GWSS one.
Hey, Professor Myers, are we just supposed to put the data visualization in the same
Yep,
thing?
so just copy paste it into there, or if you
Okay,
copy paste a link or something like that. Yep.
all right.
They're not gonna be the most exciting recordings, I'm realizing that's okay. And I'll try to get those downloaded and uploaded tomorrow, the past week or so. The problem is I used to do it when I was in my office, but now my Wi-Fi is so bad, it'll take like 6 hours to download them. So I have to wait till I'm home. I believe it. Yeah, like I was trying to do advising from my office over Zoom and it was like, people were like, what are you saying? What? They like couldn't hear me because I kept breaking out. Real conducive to everything. Right. Okay, I'm loving seeing some of these pop up. Go ahead and take the next, I don't know, 2-3 minutes to put yours in if you can. If you guys are gonna need more time, that's fine. I always like either way overestimate or way underestimate how much time in class activities are gonna take, so. All right, we're getting stuff in. Looks good. I'll wait another couple minutes so other people can pop them in there. There we go. Now no one feels judged while everybody else finishes. Yeah, sorry, that's a little loud, but people had it way low. That's really good. All right, looks like more people are putting theirs in. Awesome, awesome. At about 10:20, I'll go ahead and start talking through them, and if, well, as I start talking through them, you are still working on yours, you can flop it at the end, and then we'll get to yours. Okie dokie, well, I'll start talking through them, and again, if you're still working, that's totally cool, take your time, stick it at the end, we'll get to it. All right, so Elijah made us a bar graph. And yeah, you can see pretty clearly, I like that you kept 0 on the axis so that you can see pretty clearly. You know, there is a difference, it's not huge, but you can see the difference, and then always the independent. Got a few, right? Good for them. I do sometimes wish we had more than a 2-party system, but since we currently don't, right? This is how a lot of elections look. So, and then Rowan did a beautiful pie chart here. Yeah, and again, you can see that it's not huge, but there is a difference there. And then our independent get their little sliver. And yeah, that we had. Again, it's not a huge margin, right? But all you need is to have more votes than the other person, right? And particularly to be over 50% if you can, right? But yeah, you really just need to have the most votes, and Glenn Youngkin did. And so he's currently our governor. Yes, another Caitlin, oh, I should say percent. Yep, that's totally cool. It can be a teeny bit clunky when you're making these, right? It can sometimes feel a little cumbersome, right? But yeah, I really like, again, the pie chart shows everything very clearly. And then I'm gonna just put yours all on one page, Ayana. Maybe. There we go. You're so right about it. It is really hard to create this on a Google Doc, and you did a great job. I love the creativity here, right? But yeah, that, you know, you could even do this fairly accurately, just drawing the bars yourself, right? Ooh, I like the colors on this pie chart. Nice. You know, the pink really standing out. I like that quite a bit. And then Ishia, oh, donut chart. Yeah, but this is a nice donut chart, right? It's meaningful. It's not the weird ones that we're gonna look at. Oh, and I like the colors here from Bryn. Nice. Yeah, and like sometimes you'd have to do them in grayscale, right? Because you're gonna publish it in a newspaper. If as a person who's publishing an academic article, you want color figures, you actually have to pay for them. So I always just make them grayscale because I ain't got that kind of money. But people with big grants will. And then Olivia. Oh, that's okay. We're selling the state. It's totally fine. Oh, this is random. It has nothing to do with anything other than we're thinking about politics. I was looking at doctors covered under my health insurance the other day, and one of the first people who came up was Ralph Northam, who's our former governor. He's back to practicing, apparently. So I was like, well, there you go. Also, you're pediatrics. I don't know why you're coming up on a search when I'm looking for adult people, but you know, good for you, man. He's gainfully employed. I mean, pediatric neurosurgeons are not exactly a dime a dozen, so it doesn't really shock me that he's back to working. Cool. So yeah, y'all came up with really nice ways to visualize this in really accurate ways, right? And what did that take us? With me gabbing about classes, right? Which I'm sure was distracting. It took you all maybe 20 minutes to do these. And so then I just want you to sort of keep that in mind as we go through our slideshow and talk about some of these other things, right? That this does take some time, right? But it isn't that hard. It doesn't take that much time. And if any of you were let's say an intern at a news station, right? You could certainly make a better graph than this one. Like I don't even know how people make these. Like, how do you look at this and go, clearly 13% should have the biggest bar, right? And 34 should have one of the smaller ones, right? Also, and I know news stations do this a lot with polls, but I don't know how meaningful it is to show percentages on like one Likert scale type item, right? So this is the Zika virus. If people don't remember what that was, this was around 2016. It was a virus that was mosquito borne, and the biggest risk is if you were pregnant, it could cause horrific birth defects, like babies developing without a brain and things like that. So I remember it was somewhat here, not that much. It was in the Caribbean, it was in Brazil, and that's where the Olympics were at that point in time. And so there were a few, not many, but Olympians who decided not to compete because either their spouse was pregnant, they were thinking about getting pregnant. I had a friend at the time who was thinking about getting pregnant, but had just taken a vacation to the Caribbean, so she waited 6 months before they started trying to try to, make sure that wouldn't be an issue. And again, just someone who, sometimes I wonder if when this stuff happens, someone just goes online and searches just like bar graph and then takes the existing bar graph and just slaps the percentages on it or something. Like, I don't know how else this happens, right? Like the 217 should clearly be the same and the 13 should be lower. The 50 maybe might be a little bit taller, right? And I don't have the video clip from this. I don't know if the weatherman is like, wait, what? Right on the air, if he just goes through it, right? But yeah, again, like you all just saw, it takes a minute, but it's not that hard to make a good data visualization. Here is another one that's about Girl Scout cookies. And so, like the math one, the math one is actually, right? It shows like most of the country loves Thin Mints, but in the Southeast, people have that tied with Samoas, right? Cool. It's when you get over to the bar graph that it's problematic, and it's because they put the name in the bar, right? And then it looks like the bar is representing how many people like them or the percentage of people who like them. But in fact, it's just like this one is long because do-si-dos are called two different things depending on where in the country you are. Like I found out when I lived in Georgia. I was like, what do you mean they're not called do-si-dos? We live in Ohio. I don't remember which place, but I'm just like, okay. And same thing with Tagalongs. So there are apparently 2 factories that make Girl Scout cookies, and one calls them Tagalongs and one calls them. Yeah, caramel delicious.
That's
Trefoil, I think I heard that when I was in Indiana. I was growing up as a Girl Scout, and we called them That's what they're that too. Yeah, and it's almost like kind of random depending on which factory you get, right, by what they're called. But anyway, this is an example of like bad bar graph. Like even if they just put the name and put the percentages next to it, right? That would be more accurate than sticking the percentages on the bar. I mean, but this is vital information, right? Dr. Balagon's daughter sells them, and so she always like delivers them to me, and oftentimes I'm teaching, so just brings me my order in class, and I'm like, yup. I think last time we were talking about eating disorders and they were delivered, and I was like, I do not have one. Here are my cookies. All right, so this one, again, at first glance, doesn't look too bad, right? Pretty proportional, things like that, until you look at the dates at the bottom. And they're spaced as if they're pretty equal, but they're really not, right? We're going December to September the next year, that's September to March. And then March to June is more than a year, and yet they're the closest together. And so now we're gonna be getting into some charts. Oh, no, I guess I thought I had a corrected one for this. In a few more slides, we're gonna be getting into some charts where like someone took it and corrected it. This one I don't have one for, I thought I did. Again, sometimes you just need to like make sure you're putting the answers for the correct question on there. So a couple problems with this one. A, what was the best part of the Super Bowl? Yes and no. But then B, they switched the percentages in the pie chart, in the chunks. So, you know, Winnipeg Sun, take a moment, look at this, have somebody edit it, right? And I fully recognize that like the Super Bowl sometimes doesn't finish till like 11:30 at night, and then you're trying to get the morning paper out, right? So it's a quick turnover. But just have someone else put eyes on it, right? And they'll see it. Same thing here. Question of the day: what should cost less, a gallon of gas or a gallon of milk? Again, yes and no. You know, I don't know what that actually means. And then we have the interesting issue where people try to like kind of be cute, kind of be clever. And this one, they are saying the heights of bridges, right? And so I don't know if anyone's ever seen the videos online. There's like a bridge somewhere that like clearly has stated how low it is, but like people run into it with trucks all the time. And so this is sort of reflecting on that. And then there's average house cat shown for scale. But yo, but my cat is not 14 foot 3 inches. I don't know if someone thought it was 14 inches. Just the idea of my cat being 14 feet is like a little terrifying, just because he doesn't always have personal space, right? So like, I don't know who was thinking of what here, right? And why a house cat is what we show for scale. There's a great, is it a Twitter account or Instagram account? It might be both at this point. That's like, oh no, it's a Facebook group. It's like Americans will use anything except the metric system. And it's like cat for scale, banana for scale. Yeah, again, just put eyes on it. And again, trying to be clever. By showing people's relative heights. But the problem is, again, not starting the axis at 0. Looks like the people in Latvia are giants and the people in India are tiny, when in fact they're all within a 5-inch range of each other, right? Like I'm 5'4", right? Someone who's 1 inch taller than me is not 12 feet tall. This is an example of how you can cherry pick data. So people will take good data and they're actually showing a good representation of it, but squeeze in like certain dates to try to prove their point. So a conservative think tank focused in on this one spot on this graph in March of whatever what year, 1989 versus 2009, to show there was actually more ice in 2009 than there was in 1989. But if you look at the entire rest of the graph, right, there was less. And so again, this is an argument for being transparent, being clear. And again, climate scientists could look at this and explain why there's this one spot where that wasn't true, right? Again, with people trying to be clever. And this is trying to show who is in the leadership at Papa John's Pizza. And so they put them on essentially a pie chart because they were like, oh, let's make it a pizza. That's clever. But that doesn't make any sense for what they're trying to show, right? So this is actually where we're gonna start to see some of those corrections. So here is an example of how you could show that in a way that made more sense, right? The idea of like, here's a timeline, here's when the turnovers were for leadership, right? Makes a lot more sense than trying to look at things on time, right? On a pizza. Again, people try to be clever. Sometimes you just don't need to be. I mean, you could do this and make these pizzas, right? These dots could have been pizzas and you could still look clever. Again, with this one's not even percentages, it's number of people they took in the first round draft pick. And so like putting it on a pie chart doesn't make sense at all. Again, this is the NFL draft. So it's like the number of people from each college that went into the first round of the NBA draft or the NFL draft, sorry. So this is how you do the same thing, but accurately, right? It's not as cool. I mean, you could put the school's logo on each bar to make it look spiffier, right? But it's a little absurd to just be like, yeah, this makes sense, right? Here is another one. This is the number of appellate judgeships confirmed during the first congressional term of sitting presidents. And so they're trying to show that like Donald Trump got a lot, right? And these other people didn't get so many. But again, if you put it on a bar graph instead of these cute little judges' hammers, what you see is it's not that different, right? And it's also just easier to understand those numbers relative to each other and overall. And this was percentage of people who agreed with the court on a decision by political party. Again, we have this problem of not having a 0 on the x-axis, so it looks huge. And in fact, when you fix it this way, right, it's much cleaner, you understand more, you see, yeah, there was a difference, right? But it's not as substantial as it looks on that previous chart. Now I have some graphs from the COVID pandemic, because this is something we saw a lot in the news. We're still seeing a decent amount in the news, right? Is like, how many cases did you have, right? How many people died? This one is looking at how many people were discharged from the hospital, right? And so this was in Singapore, who had one of the best responses to the pandemic, because they basically just like shut down their borders. There were a couple of places that did this. New Zealand was another one. New Zealand, it's easy because they're an island, right? So they had very few cases. And so you see that like, even on their giant days, they're having like 13 cases, right? Whereas in America, granted, we also have a much larger population, but these might have been like 1,300, right? And what these folks did is said, you know, this is okay, but it's a little confusing to look at. So what if we just made it 2 different charts? And there's a couple of things you can do when you do that. You look at just the number of new cases that were confirmed, but then you can also look at sort of the 5-day average over time, and that gives you a better idea of sort of the overall rate. And same thing here with the number of patients discharged. And so, again, it helps you to understand when things went well, but then also that overall it was going pretty well. And a lot of this might have been due to like the flattening the curve. Here is another representation. I think this was like one county where this local news station was. And again, they're trying to show the number of cases per day overall. And everything is accurate on here, right? It's just like a little overwhelming to look at. And so these folks said, you know, a couple ways you could do this is just to like, instead of having the number of cases on each data point, just plot it. People are going to intuitively understand that. You can also take a logarithmic scale of it, which is a transformation to make the data a little more understandable, looked at as sort of an overall average. And this was a county in Georgia, their cases. This one took me a hot minute to figure out what was wrong with it. So I'm gonna minimize this and see if y'all can tell what the problem is with it is. And you might not be able to tell because the x-axis is kind of blurry. But let's see if anyone could see, and folks on Zoom, feel free to either put it in the chat or shout it out if you notice it first. Yeah, the dates jump all over the place. So it's like 28th April, but then the next one is 27th April, and then it's 29th April, and then it's May 1st, but then it's April 30th, and then it's May 4th and May 6th, but then we go back to May 5th and May 2nd. Basically, these people wanted so bad to show that it was declining that they just put the data in declining order, not looking at the dates at all. Just like, it makes no sense. I mean, this was actually something released by Georgia, and actually this is by county. Sorry, so this is the state of Georgia put this out. And so how you fix it, you just put the dates in the right order, right? And again, you could do some of those line graphs that they did before as well. And you still see that overall it was decreasing, right? But that, you know, there are times it's going to fluctuate up and down, right? We know that COVID does have an incubation period, and so it's going to take a minute once someone in a county has it for more people in that county to show symptoms, things along those lines. The scary thing right now is that we don't really have accurate numbers at all for who has COVID now, because they're not really officially testing in the same capacity they used to. I have an app I used during the pandemic called COVIDwise that would like interact with other phones around you and tell you if you'd been near someone who tested positive. That app has been, you know, unplugged essentially. And so again, this is one looking at COVID cases in the US. And this was, you know, right in 2020, the very first part of it. And they're using data from Johns Hopkins, so you think, oh, cool, that's good, right? But in fact, it's a little kind of squeezed here. And if you actually look at it, it looks more exponential in terms of the number of cases, right? If you sort of graph it with an equally spaced y-axis. And we know that's what happened in retrospect, right? Okay, so I do have a video just all about the COVID charts as well.
You may have seen this chart since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. In one image, it appears to capture the state of each nation's battle in the global war against the virus. But like all data visualizations, its design tends to emphasize some things and hides others. So here are 4 things we need to know to understand this chart. First, this is not a chart of all coronavirus cases. It's only showing us confirmed cases. That means each line doesn't just reflect the state of the outbreak in a country, but also how aggressively that country is testing people for the virus. Take a look at Japan and South Korea earlier in the pandemic. Japan's outbreak looked pretty small in comparison. But the available data on testing shows us that South Korea had tested vastly more people than Japan did, even though their population is less than half as big. And now,
and this is honestly some of the problem with the early US numbers. So the US, for whatever reason, rejected the already made coronavirus tests. And like, we made our own, which like, woohoo capitalism, but also meant that like we were behind the curve, right? So at the very beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't necessarily get an accurate test.
Japan slowly increases their testing, the outbreak there looks more worrying. It's a good reminder that we can't understand case data without some sense of the testing levels, and that's especially true for lower income countries where we know their testing capacity is limited. The second thing to know is that the scale for the y-axis on this chart is a bit different from most charts. It's called a logarithmic or log scale. On a typical linear scale, you divide the space by adding the same value over and over. The log scale is made by multiplying a value, in this case 10. 100 times 10 is 1,000, times 10 is 10,000, times 10 is 100,000. That means that there's no fixed amount of space on this chart for a certain number of cases. So the first 100,000 cases take up this much space, and then the next 100,000 cases get just this much. The higher the numbers, the more visibly squished they become on a log scale. So why do it this way? Well, let's take the 5 countries with the largest outbreaks right now and rewind them back to March 17th. On a linear scale, it looked like things were pretty bad in Italy, but the others were doing better. The log scale offered a much clearer warning. We were all on the same path of exponential growth. It's the nature of infectious disease that numbers get big fast, so it makes sense for numbers to get big fast on the chart too. Fast forward a few weeks, and the linear scale shows cases climbing and climbing, while the log chart shows curves that are flattening. As governments have implemented lockdowns and social distancing, the virus is spreading at a slower rate than before, which isn't very visible on the linear scale. But keep in mind that the difference between this dot and this dot is more than 32,000 people. And the log chart tends to downplay just how many more confirmed cases there are in the US than in the other countries. Which brings us to the third thing to know about our chart. It doesn't account for population size. When you adjust for population, really small countries like Iceland and Luxembourg appear to have the biggest outbreaks for their size, which may reflect higher testing rates. The US and China have much bigger populations, so their curves drop a bit. But the size of a country doesn't really affect the growth rate of its cases, and it doesn't tell us much about how much the country is struggling. It just pushes smaller countries up on the chart and tends to hide the fact that the outbreak is especially bad in certain regions of bigger countries, like the state of New York. And the last thing to know about our chart is that the x-axis doesn't plot time by the date, but by the number of days since the country recorded 100 confirmed cases. For Italy, that was February 24th. For Turkey, March 19th. When they're all layered on top of each other, it allows us to compare the trajectory of the outbreaks. But it tends to obscure the fact that the pandemic hit some countries before it hit others. The world watched as tens of thousands of cases appeared in China. Then big outbreaks in South Korea, Italy, and Iran sent a message about what was to come. 2 weeks after South Korea reported its 100th case, the United States did the same. In a situation where actions taken early can have a much bigger impact than actions taken later, time is a crucial factor. And we have to remember that some governments had more time than others.
And so I really liked that one in particular because it really showed how these small differences, right, and how we look at the data can make different indications for things. And there's a reason why epidemiologists do it certain ways, right? But that, we might need to sort of like regraph it if we want it to make like linear sense to us or calendar time sense. All right, we'll stop there for today. We'll keep talking about charts on the same topic on Friday. Thank you all for helping me create good data visualizations today. And I'll see y'all then.
Hey, Professor Myers.